everyone, how are you? I hope you're all doing well. Um, let's see. So today was my second oldest's birthday. He turned 30. So 30 years ago, I was healing from my first baby that was born face up. His brother after him was born that way too, and that's just not good. And I mean, in 30 years ago, we were still very much of the thought that you needed to be, laying down in a bed in the hospital. And, as I've told you guys, I'm just fat now, but I'm petite in my bone structure. So I was really, smaller than two. So he was 9 pounds, 2 ounces and born face up. So it was just a terrible, terrible, horrible, painful birth laying there. He was a beautiful, big, healthy baby. And I sometimes feel like people don't understand what we're talking about with the Watt situation because they've not been in the situation where everything looks fine, but it certainly isn't. Nothing could be further from the truth. In my first marriage, I was very much the role of Chris Watts, if you will. The abuse was psychological, financial, etc. And so my ex was kind of a SW in his own right because he was embezzling. And I didn't do anything like that, so I didn't have any money of my own. I worked full time. He worked full time, but he was cooking books, and so he had his money and I had my money, and we each paid half of the bills, half of the house payment down the middle. I was able to buy. We were able to buy our first home when I was 18 and he was 20. But we did half the house payment, half the electricity bill, half the food, everything half, right? So the difference is that he had money in savings and in CDs and mutual funds and all of that, and I didn't. So, I am, sitting there, scraping every penny to try to, keep up with my half because God forbid I didn't have half. But he was really good at making me feel less than. And I just didn't know how I was going to make up for not having the money for the half. So I worked until, so it was my scheduled 2 days off, and I went outside and it was a full moon and I was just so big and uncomfortable, and I just looked out at the moon and I was like, please, 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 I know that people go into labor in full moon, please let me go into labor. And nothing happened. I stared at that moon, and then I went in to go to bed and went to lift my leg and my water broke, and I was like, all right, we're gonna get this on and popping. And I had so much water. I think I told you guys, because some, people who have not given birth don't know how much water, how much amniotic fluid there is, and there's a ton. And, it was just coming out all over, and he was getting so mad because it was getting all over the car, and got out of the car and walking into the hospital, and this nurse gets out of her car and she sees me, and my waters are just, literally going down my leggings into my shoes and coming out. And, she grabbed a wheelchair and helped me and everything. But, he probably went to go and try and clean up the car. Anyway, really rough labor. And as I don't come from a family that I can really claim as my own. I've been on my own basically since I was 12-ish. Um, birthed all six of my kids without my mother being there, and my mother has spent 15 minutes with my three youngest ones, but she has never laid eyes on my three oldest. Um, so it worked out good. I was excited because then, those 2 days wouldn't, if I went into labor, that, so I was like, okay, I can, this is good. And that, because I thought I'd be able to go back to work, after 2 days. But I tore so horribly because he was face up and had to use a vacuum extractor, and the doctor was a fucking prick. And he yelled at me. He's like, if you don't start pushing, I'm gonna cut you all open with a knife. You want me to cut you all open with a knife? That's what he said. And that's what happens when you don't have somebody, who's gonna advocate for you. And then I remember, just tearing so bad, so bad, and the pain was making me throw up. So I woke up and I threw up, and this horrible nurse Ratchet, was screaming at me because I couldn't make it to the bathroom to throw up. But just the pain was just so bad after I'd given birth, and I just wanted to go home. I went home, like 20 hours after giving birth, and like I say, I thought I'd be able to go back to work, but I just couldn't because the swelling was so bad. It's like a freaking nutsack, right? So anyway, I was fine to go back to work a week later. So I went back to work full time 1 week later. So it was hard for me to make up, my half because I had missed that week. But it was, in retrospect, so I was 20, having my second child, and, nothing was, I still had to keep the house very clean and everything. And like I say, earn my half and I didn't have time to really bond and be able to just enjoy being a mom and bond with my baby because I had to make half, And so then 6 years later, got pregnant with my third child, and like my first husband and I, we were together 13 years. I don't know how we had 3 kids because I don't think we actually did it 3 times, but anyway. It was the same thing, but I started getting eclampsia with my third pregnancy. Something just wasn't right. I had kidney stones then and eclampsia, and I was working in the hospital. And my blood pressure was just really creeping up there, and my doctor said, no more, you're not working. You're not working. You're on bed rest. And I knew I couldn't be because I had to pay half still, and I got the 2 other kids, and I just ignored her. And the problem was that she was the chief of staff at the hospital. And her patient was the patient I was taking care of. And so, it was like about 2 weeks after she had written all the papers, I was on bed rest. She comes in to check on her patient, and I'm in the room. She looks at me, and I'm like, oh my God. She takes me outside. She's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't, what do you want? What do you mean, like, specifically? Like, what am I doing? She's like, no. She's like, I wrote those papers. I don't know what's wrong with you, but this isn't going to happen. I want you to go over to the mother-baby unit right now. We're going to put some monitors on you, and you'll be in hospital bed rest if you won't comply with my orders. And I spent the next 3 days in the hospital because my blood pressure was that high, and just the stress of then, once again not being able to make half was there. And he was a huge baby. He was 9 pounds, 13 ounces face up. So it was another really, really rough labor. But it's it's that covert humiliation, that feeling that you're less than, that you'll never be enough, that you're flawed, that because you don't have as much money, then you're a lesser person. I see that in the ruse, that they act like everything is about money in that image. And so Shanann had to put on this image that she had all this money, even though she really didn't. Okay, so you see that there. And then you see the financial abuse and the lies and the control that go around it. People don't see this because they haven't experienced it. People think that domestic violence is, you see the woman with the black eye at the shopping market, and, and a scuzzy old man, going to pick her up, and you can identify what it is, and you wonder why she doesn't leave him and all this stuff, right? It's not. This covert abuse of power and control, and I was so controlled and so much power over with that money, and like I say, it came from everything from me not being able to really bond with my older children, and everything like that, just because it had to be a certain way with money. So I got a comment a couple days ago, and it was classic, and it was oh, you must be such a perfect mother, oh yeah, and this and that, and do you feel better about yourself bashing a dead woman? Like, oh my God, where did they get this bashing a dead woman thing from? It was like bashing a dead woman, and the person's name was Amanda Taylor. So I'm like, okay, is it the real Amanda Taylor, or is it someone clowning these feeds, right? And you just don't know. And then I got this comment, and I had to put it on the community forum because it was just so freaking funny. Because so one of you rightfully commented about how ridiculous it was that she got pissy with him because he paid $60 for parking. He is working and he is earning that money. So of course, if he wants to choose to pay for $60 parking, and he's been working every day of his life, hard and everything, why wouldn't he think that there'd be a problem with $60 for parking? Why would he have to feel like he couldn't do that? But, she covered with it. Great, that's money we don't have for the beach for the girls. Not that she was scheduling a private ultrasound, probably so she could make him say whatever, the next week. But it wasn't as if he could ever have a say in the money. I know what that feels like. I really do. And it's just this omnipresent feeling you can never leave. It's this huge weight that just brings you down, that power and control. So this person then writes, it was the most ridiculous. I don't know if all of you guys can see my posts or not on my community page. I try to be good about putting stuff up there. So our friend here, one of our truth warriors, says, if she was making $70K per year, why was she worried about $60 for parking? I'm so sick of hearing people say she made money. No, she didn't. Exactly. Because the rumor out there is that, oh, she made just as much as him. He even thought it because she controlled all of the money, so he never saw it. So she didn't tell him that she's not making any money and cooking the books to make it look like she is, but actually she is not. And so this Shiner comes along and writes underneath this comment. Her name's Misty Blue. And she says, the question is, why does it bother you? Because on Watt's very average salary, there is no chance they would be living in that home. What? Think about, is $4K a month mortgage school, dot, dot, dot. How did they eat, dot, dot, dot. She did not just make money, she had a retirement account that she frequently put money in. He had no car payment and sported an Audi. They were selling the home for profit. It was worth 600,000 plus last time I checked. What a fool. 60K a year, and he knew he could not afford two baby mamas. It was his demise. What a treacherous fool. What can't you see? I don't get it. What? Do you need medical attention? Which village did you come from? Let me call them and tell them that I found their idiot. Like, what? It's like the ones that, like, I see and, like, I don't even let you guys see. I just delete most of them. Just block it, kick them out of my freaking, my zone and save you guys from the horror of seeing it all. But, like, some of that, I think one of you got me thinking because y'all said that in her own town, everybody hates her and everybody knows what that family's like and everybody hates that family. I'm like, this is what I know. I know they do because when the news cameras came that way, like I think the Colorado news went over to North Carolina kind of asking, and they went to, Shanann's mom's salon. And they were like, oh, yeah, well, what can you tell us about, And the coworker of the mom straight up said, she's like, oh, yeah, Shanann came out here, because she was getting a divorce. And, and she's pregnant with the third baby. And, and they're getting a divorce. And then when he came, he was real weird. And he had this weird look on his face. And he was acting all shady and everything. So the media hangs on to that. Oh, he was acting all shady and weird. Not the part before that she moved out there because she was separating, divorcing. Is that there is a whole story out there that's not being said. And I got to thinking. There are people that I know of, because I'm 50 now, so, full of wisdom and all kinds of stuff, that I have gotten to a point where I have known some frickin' weirdos in my life. And I have busted some people for some lying, scamming crap that they've done. And had I not, but don't know what would have happened. I mean, clearly I've earned my angel wings, here on earth, but I'll start with some of them, the less, and then I'll give you the big story of it. So, okay. And then we'll put on what I want to put this shit show on here. I'll put him on. Because look at this. Aaron Carter hospitalized. His mother steps in to care for him. November 15th, 2019. Because they're all so surprised that he just, passed away almost exactly the same time 4 years later, because they're like, but he was sober. He was not. I'll get into that. But anyway, let me tell you about some weirdos. Let's see. Okay. So, this chick I went to high school with, just absolutely gorgeous. She has gorgeous long hair and everything, but, big fat ass, and no personality, and really could not hold a conversation. Just beautiful, though. Really a beautiful girl. But, just kind of, she hung around us, just kind of, just didn't really say anything. Well, she was spoiled. She didn't ever have to lift a finger. Her parents didn't really, seem like they cared much about what she did, as long as, she didn't really bother them. And her mom had a nice kind of sports car, and her mom would send her down to go and, buy cigarettes, whatever, a nice car. But there wasn't really anything, I mean, not too much. Well, our senior year, she had a psychotic break. It turned out that, she she has some serious, serious mental issues. And we lived in a small town, and she had to be airlifted. I mean, the Thorazine wasn't doing anything. I mean, she lost her shit. And hadn't really heard anything about her since then. And then, the Facebook kind of came up, and Facebook was pretty slow, but I was kind of one of the first ones from my small town to kind of go online. And I saw her online, and I, saw a couple pictures of her, and I was like, oh, well, she's still kind of, kind of pretty in her own way, I guess. And she starts telling me that, oh, yeah, well, she lives in LA, and, she's one of the it girls, and she walks in with her, her little posse, and whatever she wants is given to her because she is so hot and so skinny. And she gets the drugs, she gets the hookups, she gets anything she wants, cars, anything like that. And she's getting some plastic surgery in a couple of weeks and whatever. And I'm like, oh, wonderful. Okay. Well, all right. Well, then, as she, we're continuing talking. And by talking, I mean, Facebook messaging back and forth. Well, then it turns out that she kind of is being weird. Some things don't add up. And then she's like saying, she's paranoid. I mean, no, she's not saying she's paranoid, but she's like, these neighbors are screwing with me. I can see this, and they're flashing their lights and stuff. Okay, kind of weird, right? And then it turns out that, oh, she got kicked out of her place, didn't have a place to live. I helped her find a shelter. Of course, she got kicked out of the shelter, every shelter that I could find, on the internet, and tell her to go to, because, oh, yeah, well, they did this and they did this. And of course, she wasn't following their rules, right? Because she's got that kind of psychosis where nothing matters, where she's never wrong, and she will not conform to rules. Well, ultimately, she says, she tells me she's pregnant, and she doesn't know what to do. And I'm like, you can do this, you can keep the baby, you can do this, and you can get sober. So she's telling me all this stuff, and she's just going through all of it with me. She's going to meetings, she's doing this, she's doing that. And I sent her some maternity clothes, and then she started saying, I saw that then she was saying to another friend or whatever that she was partying or whatever. And I saw one of her mutual friends, and I couldn't get a hold of my friend. So I reached out to the mutual friend. I'm like, look, she's scaring me. She's not answering. Is she okay? She's like, yeah, I mean, she's fine. We went to a concert last night. I was like, concert? And I was like, isn't she kind of uncomfortable? She's like, what? So we text back and forth, and I'm like, because she's pregnant. She's like, she's not pregnant. She's fat. And I'm like, what? So she sends me a picture, and I mean, oh my, because sometimes people have a really, that certain kind of big butt. They really can it just goes. And she's one of those because she's lazy as fuck, right? And so she's just huge, hideous, right? So I said, well, she told me that you and her go to these LA parties, and you guys are the it girls. She's like, what? No parties. No, she's not pregnant. She said, well, the reason why she's, really sympathetic to her is because of the kind of abuse that she suffered. And she said a couple of really specific words to me that she said my friend suffered. And I'm like, what? I'm like, no, she was not abused whatsoever. That was me. She's like, what? So this chick goes around with my story, my, regs, then, the song The Little Runaway, That was the one that all my friends would always, say was my song because I was just a scrappy little runaway, right? That's what she said she was, and the kind of abuse that I suffered that, people know my story and stuff. She was going around on my story doing that. So she's just this compulsive freaking liar, was not pregnant, is not some it girl down there getting all this stuff. And, oh, so I was just about ready to freaking, implode. So, she was using the pregnancy thing because she's just fat. So then when she couldn't get into other shelters, she would lie and say that she was a victim of domestic abuse and she's pregnant. And then she'd get to go into domestic violence shelters. No man would touch her with a 10-foot pole. I mean, she's that homely, right? But this is what she'd do. So I confronted her about the pregnancy, and she's like, yeah, I lost the baby. I just didn't want to upset you. I was like, what? Obviously she was never pregnant, but, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So she goes on, to get the focus off of, let me see where it's at. To get the focus off of, her not being pregnant with me, she starts complaining about the shelter she's in. And I'm like, what shelter are you in? And she's like, just one with a bunch of fucking kids running around and everything. And I'm like, oh my God, she's in another domestic violence, that nasty freaking skank. So I watch my Facebook, and she puts up this picture of a box of pizza. She had a big ass pizza delivered to the woman's shelter for her fat ass. Okay. And she posts next. She says, Am I going to share my food with any of these screaming bratty kids here? Hell and fuck no, because my life matters. So she was sitting in a domestic violence shelter with kids who had been displaced, sitting on the floor, looking at her fat, ugly ass eating an entire pizza by herself, writing these words. And because I have the screenshot, I'm looking at it right now. Am I going to share my food with any of these screaming, bratty kids here? Hell and fuck no, because my life matters. Yep. And right above it, she was asking for people to contribute to her GoFundMe. So a couple of days later, what had happened that night, I saw that post. I saw where she tagged the shelter that she had the pizza delivered to. Okay, if you're a real victim of domestic violence, you're hiding from your abuser, are you going to then put on your Facebook, you're going to tag the frickin' women's shelter? So I called the shelter and I'm like, do you have a kind of an obese chick there in your shelter who may or may not be eating a pizza right now? They're like, yes. And I was like, do you have an email where I could send you a screenshot? I sent him the screenshot on what she said about the screaming brats and that she wouldn't share her pizza. And I filled him in on the fact that she has no man. She is not pregnant. She is not an abuse victim. Okay? So she gets kicked out of there. So then it was like 2 days later, and she, writes me, she's so happy because she met this guy online across country. And he has a house of his own, supposedly. So, poor guy, cross country, she, goes and it takes her beater car and goes, pedal to the metal all the way out there. And by this time, she has 4 dogs because she always has to get animals because the animals get the GoFundMe stuff going for her and whatnot. And I found out how many animals she was being so neglectful that she caused their death for. And So anyway, she goes cross country with 4 dogs in her vehicle, and she keeps putting, on her Facebook about how all these horrible Midwestern roundabouts that, she keeps getting almost killed in them because people go the wrong way in them. Obviously, she's going the wrong way, right? Because she's crazy. But anyway, so she goes out. This poor guy meets her on the internet. This poor guy, has a house, turns out, and his parents gave him a house in the downstairs. He rents out. So, she comes in with her 4 damn dogs, plants herself on the couch, and she pees her pants too. So this poor guy who meets this chick on the internet who thinks she's beautiful because she has these highly edited pictures of her. Highly edited. Heavily edited. Photoshop, and I don't even know what, right? So she shows up for this poor guy, of course, pisses his couch the first night. He gets mad at her for pissing his couch, and then she, yells at me because, or not yells at me, but, messages me that he's such a dick because he's yelling at her, and she can't help it if she pissed his couch. And so then, none of her animals are trained to go to the bathroom outside. So she gets there, drives cross country, plops on this guy's couch, has all of her animals around, and then they're shitting and pissing all over the carpet and everything. And this poor guy is like, I want you back out. So she, it was like 4 days later. 4 days? She lasted 4 days with him. And she said, so she messages me and says, Matt hit one of my dogs and I'm not having that. So I called the cops and said that he hit me instead. His ass can go rot in jail for the rest of his life for as long as I'm concerned. Yeah. So this poor dumb guy who meets this chick says, "Oh yeah, come on, let's fall in love." Right now she's got him in jail, and the people in the downstairs apartment are complaining because there's 4 dogs upstairs, whatnot. Well, then she's taken everything that she can. She takes these pictures of all these guitars and everything that she has. She's loaded them up, and she's going to take them to the pawn shop. She's like, how much do you think I can get for this? And I'm not saying anything. I'm just letting my messages go on read because I'm like, not like anybody would even care. Not like the cops will do anything. But, this is her, and this is what she does. And so then, she went and hawked everything, and then she went and she got a knife and pepper spray and everything, all ready for if he tried to come back into his house, which was now her house, because she was going to continue up with the domestic violence stuff. And so she got a restraining order on him for domestic violence, etc., etc. His parents ultimately had to get an attorney and get her back out. And I guess they had to pull the floorboards and everything, and it was a big disgusting mess. Then what did she do? Oh yeah, with her catfishing, there was. So I have very pale skin, so I was going through a phase where I was wearing really bright red lipstick, and everybody loved it on me, and it was like this thing, they're like, oh my gosh, that's so pretty on you, and it was kind of my thing. Well, that fat cow, she decided to, with all of her money that she had from pawning that guy's stuff, go to the Sephora and have her makeup all done and have this bright red lipstick. So then she has it and then overly photoshops herself, puts up this picture with this bright red lipstick, and then I was like, oh, wow, you're so beautiful. That red lipstick, oh, yeah. And I'm like, you know what? I'm like, because I watched all of the guys just fawning for her now, from our class. I'm like, oh, my God. These idiots. So then she's trying to hook up with all of them, and I'm like, you know what? They want to fall for her catfishing. I'm not even going to say anything. So then one of them did. And I checked in with him, because she was going, finally when she got kicked out of the other place, she drove straight home. And so I waited like a day or so, and I was like, oh, hey, I know that, she was coming your way, and it looks like you guys were gonna meet up. And he's like, you don't know how fat and smelly he said that he had to roll down the windows in his car, and his car can't get the smell of horrible fish and ass out of the car. I'm like, yep. He's like, but her picture's online. I'm like, yep. Yep. So if something happens to her, let me see let's see. She's in and out of psych hospitals all the time. But she goes to the psych hospitals basically for a place to, to stay, because she won't ever comply. But what'd she say here? Oh, yes. She said that she checked herself into a psych place because she loves it, because she gets to lose so much weight when she gets on. No, she loses the weight. That's why she won't take them. That's what she says. She goes, I lose so much weight when I get off those bullshit psych meds. And so, what did she say? So, after she did that, went and hooked up with one of the friends, and he was mortified and, dumped her. He, basically told everybody else, but then what did she do? She wrote this big thing on our. So when the heat was getting on her, she put up this big thing. Let me see if I can find it. She put up. Let's see. Basically, what she did is she put up this huge thing about how terrible her life is, and that she had a stillborn, and called her dad, and her dad would not even send her the money to bury the baby, and all this stuff. Remember, there was no baby. Okay, so this is what I'm saying. So this is, and I put it all up there. I warned everybody who she was gonna, get in contact from, every mutual friend, and you know what? I still see those mutual friends, friending her, and and giving her money and everything, but they don't see her because she stays away, because she's realized once they see her, then they don't believe it. But so that's one person. Oh, then this other chick, I couldn't remember her name. Let's call her Ruby. So I get this friend request from Ruby. I'm like, God, I don't remember this chick. Same thing though. The picture. The picture looks like this beautiful chick, and I'm like, gosh, I would remember somebody that pretty from school, but everybody else is friends with her. Why don't I? I've got all these mutual friends with her. Why don't I remember? Well, sure, I accept Ruby's friend request, because why not? So then, Ruby seems to have quite a lot of problems. Says that she's this army wife, and her husband has this terrible PTSD, and he's a corrections officer, and and every day they're in these knock 'em down, horrible fights, and oh my gosh, and she is just this, she does what she can for him, but he's just troubled because of all that he had in the army, and she stood by him and all this stuff, and And I'm like, gosh, I really relate. Because, my husband had been in the military, so I know it's tough. And especially when they're gone and, all that you have to deal with. And so I kind of started writing her. I was like, well, did you know that, you can reach out to this military service? Did you know you can? And she was real evasive and everything about it. Like, what? Well, then all of a sudden, she has this big GoFundMe because she had to leave him because he assaulted her, he beat her up, and you've got all these, people, going, oh my gosh, all these Captain Save a Hose come out because they want to save this beautiful girl, blah, blah, blah. Well, something just wasn't adding up. And she wasn't, because I was like, okay, you need to go to the military, you need to go here, you need to get a JAG lawyer, you need to do blah, 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 blah. She wasn't answering me. So I'm like, what is going on? And so I go and I look at her husband's page, and he doesn't look like he's, that kind of a monstery guy. So, I just kind of, started bantering back and forth with him. I was like, hey, there are resources. I'm sorry that you're suffering and everything. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, my husband was in the military too, so I understand that, He's like, I've been out of the military for this long, blah, blah, blah. She never knew me when I was in the military. I'm like, but she's saying that, she's has all these problems. And she's like, no, 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 no. And they had one child. And the guy was a total Chris Watts. And she's out there just saying abuse and all this stuff. And the guy is just like, as meek and mild-mannered and kind. He's not even like in the same city. She's saying all this. And she's getting all these guys to, want to stand for her. So I start, kind of messaging them. I'm like, why don't I remember her? I'm like, and they're like, well, I don't remember her either, but because she's friends with so-and-so, so that I go to the other so-and-so, and I'm like, why don't I remember her? Well, I don't know, because we didn't. So when we all put it together, she's this chick who was like 3 years younger than us. Same thing, fat and ugly. Was not with any guys, but she had convinced the, one guy, the now, the husband that now I'm in communication with, by this time, that she was, the it girl in school and was with all these guys and all this stuff and how popular she was. So she was just really beating him down and telling him that, he should be lucky because she was all this in high school and blah, blah, blah. And he just was giving her all this money, everything. He never touched her. There was nothing. He had not touched her in any way, shape, or form. But she's getting all these people. So ultimately, as the months went by, I had to watch it and keep in contact with blah, blah, blah. She was trying to get him whacked. And all under saying that he had committed domestic violence, which he didn't. There were no charges. It didn't happen. It did not happen. And so ultimately, so I had to go back, get the local police involved. They had to go back and forth, and ultimately, so she ended up losing custody of her son, which was the right thing to do. He has custody. He does great. Now he has a woman who really loves him. It's basically very much a Nicole Kissinger kind of thing, because he was a total Chris Watts. I mean, and I'm telling you, this Ruby, massive liar. She was going to have him whacked. She was going to freaking have him whacked. So that's 2 stories off the top of my head where I know of like 2 people that I went to school with who have used domestic violence and lied about it. And so I've seen things. And like I say, I think that whether we're talking about how people don't see the abuse when you talk about the Watts, or they don't see how women can lie and deceive in the ways that they do, I've seen it and I've experienced it. So the biggest story, the biggest scammer Okay, so when I. Why does this say? When I first came onto the internet, seeking answers for the questions I had for how a stay-at-home mother would be putting her kids in babysitting. I mean, that was my first thing. I'm like, doesn't the stay-at-home mom thing imply that you're not putting your kids in daycare? I don't get that. Because I worked full time and did not put my kids in daycare. My ex and I switched, so I worked days, he worked nights. Um, we never paid for daycare. We just didn't do that. And then as I got divorced and got remarried, and my second husband, I was able to stay home more. Situations were different, etc., etc. But anyway, I started listening to this one channel, as some of you guys know the backstory. So I tried to explain kind of how I could see Shanann for what she was, based on a very real situation that happened in my life. And I tried to tell the story, and she jumped my shit, man. I said, because she said she needed to go and do something with her dog or whatever. And I was like, hey, can I just kind of tell a story? I kind of want to, talk about. She's like, well, I don't know what kind of a story. I don't know, And I'm like, no, it's nothing bad. I just kind of want to, talk about, how what I saw in somebody that, would kind of relate here. And she's like, well, I don't know. And so I was like, it's okay. I started telling it. And then she just was jumping my shit. She's like, no, that wouldn't happen because, well, why? Okay, this doesn't sound right. Blah, 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 right? Well, and then, however, I was exiled from that site, and she fails to acknowledge that I was ever on that. So anyway, some of you guys kind of heard it, but this is what I wanted to talk about. So, in my little town, in the town Facebook, this chick puts up this picture of her and her husband and says that Army captain husband just moved into the area, and they've owned their own business for 12 years of her, and they've got two beautiful little girls, and they just got stationed here, blah blah blah. Oh, all right, sure. So, I was, right away to welcome her, I was like, oh yeah, my husband's in the military too, so I understand that, and how are ya? Well, right away, um, she started telling me about the domestic violence in her situation, and I felt terrible because she was, really, just really pouring her heart out. And I was like, well, you need to reach out here, you need to reach out there. Well, there wasn't time, because then I heard from another neighbor and everything about how she had been brutally strangled by him. And it was bad. She barely survived the attack. She lost control of her bladder. I mean, she was that close to dying from him strangling her. So it was kind of a big thing, small town, whatever. So I supported her. It was in the local paper, everything, and he was being charged with serious charges. I don't think it was attempted. Was it attempted murder at that time? I think it was aggravated domestic abuse because of the strangulation. So then, like 2 weeks later, she's posting all this thing, about how happy they are and everything and how wonderfully happy they are. And I'm like, well, that happens with domestic violence. It's very sad. People go back and forth. So, I messaged her and she's like, oh yeah, he just does that, and he doesn't take his meds. And, you know, she said that they had to get an attorney, 30 grand to try, to start fighting the charges and everything. I was like, wow. But okay, stand by your man. All right, I get it. So anyway, um, about 2 weeks later, I get this message from this unknown person on Facebook, and they're like, "Hey, you live in this town. I saw you comment on my sister's uh, page once. What is the name of the city that you guys are in?" And I said it, and she's like, okay, I can't find that. We have to get to the police. We have to get the police there. And she's like, it's important. It's important. I'm like, oh God, what is he doing this time? And so she sent me this letter, and before I even got done reading it, I called 911 myself. Um, what she said is, she said that she didn't want to live as a single mother. And so since he was going to have to go to jail for what he did, and the 30,000 was already blown in legal fees, blah blah blah. Um, by the time anybody got this letter, her and the girls would be um, unalived at home. So I called, and we live in an area where we don't have police departments because we're in counties and very rural, blah, blah, blah. So that's why it didn't make sense. You couldn't find the police based on a city because it's confusing. So I knew enough and knew that he was military, so I figured he had them held hostage, because why would a mother do that to her children? So I figured, he had them hostage, So anyway, they came out with the whole freaking SWAT team. And busted everything in and got in there in time. And by that time, the parents had told me, what, well, the police were there. They were like, you don't understand. These are not his children. Those are hers that she was not supposed to have, because those are her fourth and fifth children. She had already lost 3 from abuse, insurance scams, otherwise trying to unalive them. And she was not supposed to have these girls. She had moved out of state to avoid CPS interference. So she lost custody of those girls that night. And so she's lost custody of all 5 by this point. So anyway, her plan was to unalive them first and then her. And by the time that they, the Facebook message got to her sister, to me, to when SWAT was there, was under 5 minutes. So I don't know how bad. I don't know what had happened with the girls. I don't know. The ambulances took them. So I don't know. But anyway, well, that was 4 years ago at this point. And so from there, I can't count how many cars she's wrecked. Oh, before she lost the girls, she came when she first came here. She did a toy drive, so that all of the local children would be able to have a wrapped present. So she did all the collecting and everything. Well, what she did, she brought it all down to her family, and had her nephews and everybody all down there. She brought a bunch of toys, so it wasn't for local kids or anything. She did it, to come down and look like she was so generous. So the whole town out here, pretty much was disgusted with her. Um, so then, 2 years ago, they were in Vegas and they renew their, so no kids are involved, they renew their vows. And he strangled her again. And this time they met business because, it was the second time. Well, she forgave him. And it's just crazy things like this. But it's like there's so many scams and so many things. They live this life. They have so many things. They have so much money. So I don't know if they're running drugs. I don't know. But they're together still. And in all of her Facebook posts that I can see, because I'm not friends with her anymore, on there, but from what I can see, she posts all this stuff about how wonderful the kids are doing, and, oh yeah, she just made Christmas cookies with the girls, and just did all this, and everybody just falls for it, and they're like, oh, you're such a great mom. She doesn't have custody of them. She was going to kill them. They look like this picture-perfect family that had just came in for a military deployment. It was nothing like that. So I'm just thinking, if any of those people that I just mentioned were to be in some high-profile headline generating news story, would I come forward with the truth? Would anybody believe me? Would anybody believe? I keep the receipts, keep the receipts, as the kids say it. I keep all the screenshots of the wacky doodle things that these people do that I catch them on. And that's just a few. I've caught some weirdos doing some weirdo shit. So where are these people that know real scams that were going on? I know they're out there, but I know that who's ever doing this ridiculous sentence out, I've never heard those words put together before. Bashing a dead woman. Where does that come from, and why do they repeat it? Bashing a dead woman. Bashing dead children. What are you talking about? Who's bashing anybody? We're talking about something that doesn't make sense, and we owe it to the girls to know the truth and what happened. A little girl standing in front of their mom and the army captain dad in the house that they had just bought. They look beautiful. Who would have thought that, 6 weeks later, their mom was going to unalive them? And that this person who looks like she has everything on Facebook and says, she's doing this and that for her kids and buying this and that. Everybody's like, you're such a fun mom. She does not have custody of the kids. Don't know. And now this I was looking at. So Aaron Carter, he's a twin. Was a twin. So his sister is still alive. And he has the other brother, Nick. And then he had the older sister. There were 4 of them, and I think it was the sister was the oldest, I think. Either way, the sister has already passed away from drug use. And now Aaron did. And I was looking through all of this stuff, and he was not doing well in his final days. He went out to Minnesota for a very small town concert and was at the MOA. And I guess, people probably didn't even notice that he was there because, he wasn't that big. But he was living in California in just a basic home in Riverside. And he was saying that he was going to sell the house for a profit and then invest the money that he profited into another one. But now it's coming out that it wasn't true. And so he was more living in an RV. That they were going to lose the house that they were in because he's with this chick, Melanie, right? Well, they have a baby together, Prince. They named the baby Prince. And somehow, I guess that when Aaron was holding him, he dropped him, something like that. So CPS came in and was going to remove the baby, who was like 8 weeks at that time. And they did remove, but they were able to certify that Melanie's mother, who lived 2 hours away from them, was a candidate or was an acceptable placement. So they gave the baby to Melanie's mother. Now, the word problems today. I'm sorry. The way that he was existing on videos before he passed, he looked very unbathed, in pajamas. She looked very, very dirty in pajamas. The house was a big mess. And they had this housekeeper who seemed to be a nanny for the two of them, the Aaron and his girlfriend, because they didn't look like they were functional. There were Twinkies and everything in his pockets. He would go in his pockets and he'd pull out Twinkies and all this stuff. And there was garbage all over the floor, all over the tables, all over stuff. And then you see all of this computer cleaner inhalant stuff all over. All of these cans of inhalant. Now, if you're not familiar, people abuse inhalants. It's very dangerous. It gets in and it messes with your blood gases. So they inhale them and it goes into their system. And, in your body you have each red blood cell is full of a certain amount of oxygen. And as you inhale those substances, it gets into the mixture of carbon dioxide and oxygen. And so you suffocate because your red blood cells are not getting the amount of oxygen to your brain, to your body, which gives them the high feeling because their brain isn't getting the oxygen. So you see all of these cans of it all over. And then you have these idiots out there who are saying he was sober. And it's like, take a glimmer into all of the videos that he was doing in the days preceding his death. And so his girlfriend and his mother are now joining together because they're hiring a private eye, a private detective, because they don't believe that the LAPD is doing anything. They're trying to say that Aaron Carter was a victim of foul play. Now, it is reported that when he was found in his bathtub, and he'd been there for quite a while, going on 2 days a while. So he had went into the bathroom, went into the bathtub, and locked the door. So he was behind a locked door by himself. Pictures of the death scene do show all of the inhalants on the ground and whatnot. Now, when he was doing videos and walking around the house, he would read every single comment that people were doing, and he was on lives like 24/7 reading every comment, and people were cruel to him too. They were trolling him and everything. But then you still had your fangirls and stuff. But he still wanted that fandom and that attention. But he'd become infamous, it seemed. And so he couldn't put the phone down. He was addicted to it, addicted to that engagement, wanting that social media. And so the housekeeper came over and couldn't find him, and then couldn't open the bathroom door, and she called for help and whatnot. So it said that the bath water was a different color. Okay. Well, what's going to happen if you pass away in a bathtub? Your body relaxes. Okay? Yeah, it's going to be a different color, okay? So the people are saying like that's what they believe. So they hear that, oh, well, the bath color was not right. Well, yeah, but they're saying that that's what makes it suspicious. Like, no, no. So the basic autopsy has came out, and it showed that there was no water in his lungs, which means he did not drown in the bathtub. Now, just like so many others, you see, like we're like with Kylie Rodney, um, toxicology takes a while. It takes like 6 to 8 weeks. So any day now, the toxicology should be coming out. The autopsy has been done. Well, I heard this ridiculous interview by this chick, Lauren, who has this podcast. She has a whole entire freaking podcast talking to Melanie, Aaron Carter's baby mama. And this chick has no clue about anything. She had never heard of inhalants being able to do anything. She's like, well, I don't understand. They're saying that, there was this thing that was open, and, and I was like, what? I mean, it's just really irresponsible reporting. I don't know how this chick has a platform, but anyway. I guess there are all these conspiracy theories now on, that basically saying that Aaron Carter got whacked. Well, he had went through the whole Hollywood rehab thing, with the Dr. Drew and all of that, the inpatient. When there were basically, allegedly, bottles of like Xanax and Melanie says, here, baby, and she put something in his lip in one of the lives that you can see. And people are saying that that's how she would, like, allegedly she was giving him Xanax. So you have people right now, his girlfriend, his mother, out there saying he was sober. Okay, taking Xanax that's not prescribed, that you're buying off the street and huffing, and he's smoking weed, whatever, but that's not sober. If you're huffing, you have a problem. Huffing is so incredibly dangerous. And like I say, you can see here that 4 years ago he was hospitalized. His mother steps in to care for him. So I was looking at this, going back to see how much, as he looks pretty healthy in this one. I don't know if you guys have seen pictures of him in the days before his death, but he looked terrible. And he ended up getting a lot more facial tattoos and stuff, and just his lips were all receding and that his lips didn't have any color in them, which I think is from that huffing because he just doesn't, have the blood in there. And so it says, Aaron Carter has arrived in his home state of Florida to be taken care of by his mama, Jane, just days after he said he was driving out there to take care of her. So it ended up, he was going to Florida in 2019 to take care of her. Then it ends up he needs it because it says the singer and former child star posted a photo of himself in a hospital bed Thursday on Instagram with the caption, "Mama's going to take care of you." In another post, he said Jane was back as his manager. And then it says, Carter arrived at his mom's home on Thursday, and she was immediately alarmed by how much weight her son had dropped, TMZ reported. Jane said Aaron was around 115 pounds, down from 160. Hospitalization followed. TMZ said Carter was undergoing tests. Well, it's pretty easy to see what was going on because it says then around the same time as the singer's Instagram post, a note appeared in his Twitter feed that read, "I'm handling socials for my son until he recovers. Mama Jane." But that takeover didn't stick. It said Aaron was apparently back at the keyboard later that night and early Friday, lashing out at people who criticized him and his mother. And that's what he was doing, even, 4 years, up to 4 years later, just 24/7 on that phone. Just anybody, every second. It said that the former child star's weight has been this low before. In late 2017, he spent a few weeks in a facility focusing on himself and his health. His then publicist told People and brought his body from a low of 115 pounds up to 145. So we see then that in 2017 he was in a facility, and we know he was inpatient then. And then it says this time he's been reportedly stressed out by restraining orders taken out against him in September by his brother Nick Carter of the Backstreet Boys and one of his sisters, Angel, who recently had a child. So Angel is his twin. And it says his siblings allege that their brother is having a mental health crisis and has made threatening statements. Aaron Carter has denied saying what he's accused of. So there were all of these problems really, really thick 4 years ago. And it says his mental health has been discussed a lot, but Carter told the Times in September that he's not been diagnosed officially with anything. His social media feeds, however, show signs of heightened stress. Last month, Carter praised his mom via social media when she notched 40 days of sobriety after he arranged her alcohol treatment through his appearance on The Doctors. On November 2nd, he posted a video from Jane in which she said she was back home and thanked him for it. Less than a week ago, he tweeted, "I'm driving to Florida to pick my mom up and her stuff. Just as I thought she has relapsed, I'm driving my pickup truck to get her stuff and move her out with me and get her back into treatment. I love my mother and no one is going to tear her apart. They're targeting my mom." So you see, literally, this was November 19th, 2019. Now, November 15th, 2019. And what day did he just pass here? Because November 5th, 2022. So 3 years. Well, because I'm thinking it's 23, so that's why. So 3 years and 10 days prior, he was having trouble. Siblings were putting restraining orders on him. His mom had had treatment. Him and his mom were struggling to stay sober. To now have his girlfriend and his mother going out trying to say that something nefarious happened to him, giving rise to all these conspiracy theories, is just really sad. I guess it's just sad. That's all you can say, because there was years and years of this history of there being problems. Um, Gosh, Anna Nicole, because what is today? February. We just hit the 8th. I think Anna Nicole died. When did Anna? Let me see. I loved Anna Nicole, and she. Yeah, February 8th. Yes, I am right. So Anna Nicole died February 8th, 2007. So today is the angelversary of Anna Nicole. I can't believe she's been gone that long. 15 years. Um it's just, the struggle for sobriety in let me see. The struggle for society, for sobriety, is just so hard. I mean, you can't put a price on it. You see these people with all the money in the world, and they're not happy. They're trying to get happiness and joy from a substance, and it doesn't work. I guess that's just kind of what's been on my mind. Like, I can't really put it into good words. I'm not a Neeks Peaks. Like I say, I can't really illustrate it, but it's just like there's something out there that where people just cannot come out with the truth and be insightful and reflective, that they have to have an image. And whether it's somebody who's just everyday, some weirdo from high school, or somebody who was once famous, they're grasping for something, and they're all going for an image, and they're not living in the moment. And the truth needs to be spoken so that people can learn from what's truly going on around them. It's not going to do anybody any good to have witnessed and seen what they've seen with Aaron Carter, his decline in the past few years, for it to be like, oh, now, oh, yeah, it was something nefarious. It's like, no, it's just like Whitney Houston and her daughter, Bobby Christina. They both passed away in the bathtub. I think that when users get to a point, they get hot and cold or something. I don't know. I think something goes on with their temperature regulation, and then they want a bath, and then they're just too high, and they just fall asleep in the bathtub. I don't know. I don't do any of that stuff, so I don't know. But it just makes you want to sit back and think about, who do you really know? And when somebody is saying that they're a victim of domestic abuse, how do you know that they're not lying? I mean, in the first story, with a chick from high school, she did it so her fat ass could have a place to stay. The other one, because she wanted to get child support. She didn't want to work. She wanted to use their kid as a pawn. And, when he finally got custody, he didn't go after her for child support or anything. He ended up finding a really nice girl who really loves him, and it's so good, because she had really torn him apart. And then the two idiots I'm talking about, the couple of them, he's always trying to kill her, and they just go from city to city and brag about their new car and their new house and whatever. Then they're in a new city the next month, talking about what they're getting for their kids. And showing all these expensive presents they buy for each other. Like, what the hell? I'd rather just, you know, be who I am. I'm relatively happy. I'm not a crazy person. Um, so I mean, I'm relatively happy at this point in my life. Because I like just this where I don't have to feel like I'm under so much pressure to do everything like I had to feel like in my 20s. And I'm so blessed to have a husband who, if he has the money, he's going to share it. It's like we live, paycheck to paycheck, and that's fine. And he's a very good provider, and he does not mind. He would work 3 jobs if it meant me not working. But I'm the kind that's like, no, if we need me to go back to work, I'll go back to work. But blessed enough that I don't have to work right now. So anyway, just random musings of just kind of really thinking about why can't somebody come forward and say the truth about what was going on in that home? They all saw it. She wasn't an excellent mother at all. Oh. And like I say, where did the Audi come from? What? That saying he was sporting an Audi. Like, no, he wasn't. So anyway, we're almost to the midway point of the week. Yeah, we are. It's Wednesday today. So, sorry, this one's a slow and boring random thoughts with Tabitha Jane. Just in between other content. Thought I'd get you caught up on the Aaron Carter I get to. Yeah, the toxicology should be out any day now, I would think, because we're really at that we're at that 7 weeks. 7 weeks? No, it was November. Yeah, that should have been out by now. Huh. That should be out, definitely. The Moscow story, it's in the area where I grew up. I read the complaint for the professor who is filing suit for her name being used. And that video, you guys have probably heard or seen in my feed, but I'm not doing much on the Idaho thing because everybody is, and there's a gag order. So it's like there really can't be anything new. And if anybody's saying they have something new, how is it confirmed? So have a good hump day, and I will look forward to talking to you guys again soon. Thanks for all of the fun in the comments lately. I'm getting better about getting them caught up. In real time. So thanks for your patience in that. And I'll try to do a live. We should do a live. I should. So, okay, I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much. We are at, what are we at? 876. So thank you guys. I'll talk at y'all soon. Bye-bye.